Well, thank you very much indeed, Cynthia Nyamai, in the other side of the studio. I mean, when you look at Kenya, at any given point, 3 out of 10 people are hungry. The government has made a concerted effort to try and deal with this situation by coming up with various policies and incentives to help the agriculture sector to grow. Tonight, we want to delve into the issue of food security, not only here in Kenya, but in Africa. Mr. Kennedy Oyugi is an agricultural economist at Africa Harvest. He'll be helping us in this conversation. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kennedy Oyugi. First of all, give us a picture of when we talk about food insecurity in Kenya, what exactly are we talking about?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for having me here. And for us, from Africa Harvest perspective, when we talk about food insecurity, it's not about the bookish definition of inadequate food. To us, that's a bundle of shame. Mm-hmm. And even one person who is food insecure, who cannot afford adequate food of the right nutrition at the right time, that person is food insecure, and it's a shame. Even if you have one person, that's too shameful for the country. So for us, food insecurity has a number of components. One of them is that you're not getting enough food. Mm-hmm. Secondly, is that that food is not of good nutritional value. It cannot give you all that your body requires. And third, there could be food around you, but you can't access it, you can't afford it. All those are components of food insecurity.
I mean, I know different people are hungry at different times. Yeah. And, even food insecurity is, is divided into different stages. What are these stages?
Okay, we have people who are at acute level and who require emergency interventions. Mm-hmm. Those are people whom we cannot stay for a day without visiting them because we can even lose them. So there's also another stage where people are likely to enter into acute stage.
So acute people are people who are completely malnourished.
Malnourished, and they have nothing. Like, we are not saying that tomorrow they'll get something. If there are not interventions given today, mm-hmm. then on their own, we may even lose them.
And these are interventions by state actors and non-state actors.
As I said earlier, food insecurity is supposed to be a concern to everybody living. And so all state actors should always treat this as a disaster. Mm-hmm. And even non-state actors, including Africa Harvest, for example, we treat food insecurity as a national disaster. Mm-hmm. And so it has to be fought by all the available tools mm-hmm. to ensure that all of us, if we are to retain our definition as human beings, we need to fight food insecurity at all levels and by everybody involved. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't blame anybody for having not done this. Once there's a potential or there's risk for somebody to be food insecure, then that should call for all of us to unite. And I'm happy that KBC is uniting to come and to raise awareness about these issues. It's all a responsibility for all of us.
So what is the other stage?
Okay, there are those whom we feel may enter into a food insecurity situation. I may not give the book definition, but for purposes of making it practical, because here we're talking about lives of human beings, which is practical. There are people who maybe are at a level of just one season away from being food insecure. If a season fails, then they jump into the acute situation. Mm-hmm. So that should be our way of looking at it. Who are these that are already in an emergency situation? Who are these that maybe are a season away? And some people say a paycheck away from entering into a food insecurity situation. That's the practical way I would like to look at it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so what intervention or measures, are needed so that you stop people from graduating to acute levels?
A very good question, Brian. And at Africa Harvest, we recognize this can be a challenging issue because fighting food insecurity is not a one-off kind of activity. It requires that people are able to access right inputs at the right time. That's very important. And that's why we allowed, as Africa Harvest, we say the government's program of availing subsidized fertilizer is a very good step because it helps people to access inputs. Secondly, we need to make sure that people are using these inputs the way they are supposed to be used. In other words, following good agricultural practices or agronomic practices. Planting the right seed varieties for those who are doing crops, and also ensuring that they do the right spacing, following the right advice in terms of how to control pests, to ensure that each unit of land that is suitable for a certain crop actually gives us the maximum that we can get from that unit. And also ensuring that even a shilling that we spend on agricultural production gives us the best that it can give us. So that's, in a nutshell, good agronomic practices. Right planting, right varieties, right spacing, right time. That will give us the best.
Look, when you talk about Africa and Kenya, in this case, I mean, you know, the continent has still some of the most virgin arable land, you know, in the world.
Yes.
And with millions of hectares, you know, waiting to be tilled. And with a population of about 1.5 billion people, and 70% of these are below the age of 40. You know, how come Africa is still a food insecure continent?
A good question, and it's something that we need to think through as a country and as a continent. One of them is that some of the land that is there has not been opened up for production for reasons that include lack of the right machinery to do the production, lack of the right markets, for example, because you cannot just open up your land and start production when you are not sure of the markets. So we need to organize our market so that agriculture pays. Because if it doesn't pay, then I will not invest in it. If it doesn't pay, then I will not open up my land. Because I don't lose anything by it being virgin and staying there idle. But if I put in money and I want to be able to recoup it, then I lose. So we need to organize our markets, and markets will pull this virgin land to be put into production. Because somebody knows that if I produce, I will be able to sell. The other neighbor also will see you selling and changing your life. He will also be able to put their virgin land into production. And that's why, as Africa Harvest, we are trying to make sure that we teach people how to combine resources in a way that gives them income, a profit, such that more people will be willing to open up their land and put it under production. Because if you don't do that, then every other sector suffers. Our industries will suffer because there will be inadequate raw materials. We will suffer as a country because food will be so expensive. So a unit of food will cost more, yet that unit of food doesn't give you, just because it has costed more, doesn't give you more energy or more nutrients. So, as I have said in summary, we need to make our markets work. We need to provide the right information to the people, how to make better use of this land in terms of what we call extension services. And that's something that Africa Harvest is so good at. We have almost 600 trainers across the country to try and help people know that land can be opened up this way in a way that it gives you money.
You see, when you look at the African continent, it's a rapidly growing and urbanizing population, which means that you know, a lot of people are moving from the rural areas to the urban centers, where there is no major farming that happens there. And so you're looking at a situation whereby more and more young people will move to the urban centers to look for money. And the old people will be left in the villages, you know, where the main economic, the main economic stay is agriculture. And so this situation is likely to get worse, you know, going into the future. And do you see any concerted efforts by African countries to address this?
First of all, to ask ourselves, why are they moving from the rural areas? It's because they don't see income. They have responsibilities as they grow, as they mature up, yet they don't see income coming from the rural areas. And the rural areas, the main source of income for Africa is supposed to be agriculture. So they are moving because agriculture is not working. So as African countries, we need to make sure that we are making agriculture work and be able to put money in the pockets of these young people, even at the rural areas. And so when we had the Maputo Declaration those many years ago about each government investing a certain
10%.
percentage, 10% of their income in agriculture, it was not in vain. It's because those people who are sitting in that place knew that if we invested in agriculture, it will work, and it will even work for our young people who will then stay in the rural areas and be able to earn income and feed our industries and feed our people without having to come to town to engage in some social ills. So in terms of investment, that's a concern that I think is affecting all of us, especially in the industry. We haven't seen enough investment in agriculture from most governments.
And what would you classify as enough investment?
As we say, we need to be heading towards 10%
10%.
of our GDPs.
And the current average is about 5.5%.
Or even less for most of the countries. Because like just the other week, we were moving around the counties. As you know, agriculture is a devolved function. And we realized that most counties will be saying, yes, we are doing our best, but most of these need to be done in collaboration with the development partners. We don't have money for this. We don't have money for that. So in such a situation, it doesn't help us. Because again, development partners are key. Yes, it's collaboration, but we need to be taking the lead as a country, as governments in Africa, not just Kenya. And that's why when we see a government like our Kenya Kwanza government taking any step towards improving the situation, we are happy about that. Yes.
And I like the fact that you're bringing on in the issue of the Maputo Declaration. And it's almost 20 years now since, you know, African countries sat together in Maputo, Mozambique, and agreed that we will be investing about 10% of our budget to the agriculture sector. This has not happened. The best we've ever done was about 5.5%. We oscillate between 3.5 to 4.6%. Then is it that we don't realize the importance of a food secure continent, or our policies are misaligned?
That's a good question, and I think, as I said earlier, food security, or food insecurity for that matter, should be a matter of national importance. In fact, should be regarded as a national security issue. And so we can't really say that we don't see the importance of increasing our agricultural productivity or performance for that matter. But I think what could be happening is that players in the agriculture sector, maybe they don't make enough noise, because sometimes with the government allocations, not just in Kenya but across the continent, sometimes governments allocate money where most noise is coming from. And so sometimes it could be that maybe given the smallholder nature of our agriculture, people are disjointed, they're not working together, so the government is not feeling the voice from the ground. But be that as it may, as Africa Harvest, we have recognized the importance of what we talked about earlier, the movement of the youth to urban centers. And we are working so hard with our collaborators to reverse that situation to the extent that we can. For example, we are in a program where we are targeting 120,000 youth, young people between 18 and 35 in agriculture, to make sure that now these people can be able to be as change agents. They do farming and they get money, and they be able to make others see that there's money in agriculture. So we believe that if the route taken by Africa Harvest and collaborators and partners is adopted by most people to invest a certain percentage of their resources directly in the youth in agriculture, then that could be able to help us reverse some of these situations and make agriculture more, take the position that it's supposed to have.
Are there opportunities in agriculture here in Africa when you consider the fact that the average age of an African farmer is about 55 years?
There are opportunities, many opportunities. Look at Africa, especially let's use the example of Kenya. We are importing food into this country, yet our people, our young people are not employed. So to me, that's a huge opportunity. We have a market, internal market, and as we have some value chains like in rice, you realize that we import almost 80%. To us, turning that into, at least half of that into local production will be a great thing. Because the market is there. We can't say the market is not there. So if the market is there, we have the labor force, then I think that to me that's a closed circuit already. We just need to change the minds of people. And that's why as Africa Harvest, we have a program that is flagging out these opportunities to the young people, telling them, yes, instead of going to Nairobi or to other big towns to struggle and do some indignified works, in agriculture you can be able to earn. And when you do your small maths, you realize that for a crop like, a value chain like groundnuts, if you are to do good agronomic practices, in an acre you could earn like 100,000 after 4 months. Compared to coming to Nairobi or somewhere else to earn 10,000, I think it's better to stay in the rural areas. So to answer your question, huge opportunities exist.
And so, how then do we tap into these opportunities to, number one, create employment on the continent, and number two, create a food secure continent?
One's mindset change.
Mindset change?
Yes.
What is that?
For people to know that agriculture works, that there's money in agriculture.
Who is to do that mindset change?
All of us. As I said earlier, all of us. The media, let's showcase success stories. People will be able to know that, yes, there is hope in agriculture, there's money in agriculture. Then state actors like Africa Harvest, we are doing our part. We urge the government to also do their part. Because in this country, I was doing some research some time back, and I realized that at some point, Kenya was a major exporter of food items.
Yeah. And
that's a fact. What happened? That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. And how do we reverse that? Because I think due to some changes in terms of our extension systems, people lost the right way of doing agriculture. And so we started making losses. Our market started failing. So if we organize our markets, provide the right information, avail the right inputs in the right time, we are back on track.
We're back on track. Look, when you look at the agriculture sector in the African continent, we're still using very traditional modes of farming. Yeah. We're still using hoes and shovels. And the world has moved to mechanized agriculture. Why is it taking us too long to turn around from the ancient ways of farming into the modern way of farming, which has been proven to be more economical and more productive?
As you have said, mechanization is key. And we have not invested in mechanization because for some time, our agriculture has not been paying. And so you not invest where you will not recoup your investment. And one of the things that have made agriculture not to work has been the markets, poor markets. We have even allowed sometimes cartels to come and control how we do our agriculture. Somebody who has produced cannot even go to the market and sell in peace. So those are things, some of the policy interventions that we need to make sure that our markets are streamlined, such that somebody who has invested, even if you bought a tractor, that tractor can be able to generate income for you and to somebody else. So we need to change our policies, improve our market organization, even at rural areas. Make sure that we have put in place infrastructure like aggregation centers to make sure that people who produce can be able to get a place to sell their produce. That way people will naturally, organically pull mechanization. Because if you have made them 100,000 today, and I realized that my challenge was that I couldn't work as fast, then I'll go for the right machines. Sometimes you have harvested enough, and you realize that shelling will take you so much time. You go for mechanization. So let's, first of all, fix the market, fix our extension system in terms of people knowing what to do. Then agriculture will bring in more money, and people will generally pull more machines. Yeah. But again, before we leave that topic, I think this is also another area where the government could give incentives. For example, subsidizing access to the machineries. So that there are people who do not know that machines will give them more money. But if the access is enhanced and they try them out, then from there they can be able to know that, yes, investing in the machinery is good.
As we come to the end of this conversation, I mean, as Africa harvests, what kind of policy changes are you advocating in a bid to turn around the agriculture sector in Kenya and Africa to ensure the country and the continent become food secure?
Generally, it will be policies that lower our cost of production. Like, for example, if you can be able to access agrochemicals in a subsidized way, that one will easily turn around our agricultural system. Secondly, to invest in market infrastructure, ensuring that even at ward level, where we know this ward is major in this crop, we have a certain budget allocated to establishing market infrastructure. Thirdly, is to ensure that our extension system goes back to where it was before. We employ more extension officers to be able to train our new entrants in agriculture to do the right things. Because as you remember, we have been on what you call demand pool extension for many years. Some people who are now in productive age have never seen an extension officer. So if you have never been to school to learn agriculture and you have never seen an extension officer, then likely the situation is that you don't know how to produce some of these crops. So extension markets should be able to function for us too. And that requires government investment.
Government investment.
Yeah.
And what is the role of non-state actors like you?
Exactly what we are doing. Complementing what the government policies are and what the country needs. Like, we plug into extension. As I said earlier, we have like 600 training of trainers, the people we call TOTs, to help and give the farmers the right knowledge about what to do. The second thing that we do as state actors is also to organize markets. Like, we have a model called the aggregator model as Africa Harvest, where we go into the village, put together a number of farmers, establish for them a good storage where they can be able, when they harvest, they can be able to bring the crop in one center, where now somebody from maybe a distant town can come and collect from. Such that now these small people individually doing an acre or less can be able to access that bigger market because they put their produce together.
Very good.
Yes.
Kennedy, thank you very much indeed for sharing your insight with us, and we look forward to a food-secure Kenya and Africa as well.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, the KBC, for hosting us here. We really appreciate.
Asante sana. Well, we have been talking to Kennedy Oyugi. He's an agricultural economist at Africa Harvest, which is championing a food-secure Kenya and Africa. We still have a long way to go, but we need to make the necessary steps to make Kenya and Africa food secure. Because remember, as we say, a hungry nation is an angry nation. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Back to you, Cynthia Nyamai.